Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays, and joining me tonight is my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
Long time no see. It feels like it's been days, weeks, years, months.
It's been about 6 hours.
It's been 6 hours. Yeah, I'm wearing the same clothes. If anybody watched our Thursday afternoon show, but this is the type of game that I'm glad we do these live shows. Though, if we're not going to do it for this type of game, then we're never going to do it. It was entertaining in its own way.
Right off the bat, Justin Herbert is one tough son of a bitch. That's my first takeaway from this game. He was in agony after those two hits. In absolute agony. He could barely move the left side of his body. And as a result, essentially just punted on a play halfway through the play because he could barely move. And then on fourth down, throws an absolute missile shot to keep them in the game. I know. All the credit to him for toughing that out because that looked miserable.
This is going to be my semi-rant, and I tweeted this, that's what I think is always funny about the process, especially with quarterbacks, is that everybody has in their head this, like, what they want from a football player, but this raw, drooling from the mouth, like, you know, I make the joke that it's the Tim Tebow stereotype. Everybody wants the Tim Tebow in college at Florida. He's scoring on the goal line touchdown. He's and everyone's going nuts. Most of these quarterbacks and most of these amazing players aren't like that. They're tough in their own way. They're competitive in their own way. We're all human. We all are competitive and have our own personalities in our own way. And Justin Herbert shows that. He's tough and competitive and just an amazing athlete. And it was really cool to see him do that. And truly not one of those where it's like, oh, he's banged up and we hear about it on the injury report. No, we saw him get hit. We saw him come back, miss a play, and then come back and compete. And I mean, it was incredible to do that. The third one was kind of like weird where he's like, oh, whatever, I'm throwing this. And
I was hoping they were going to get him out of the game. I was like, get him out of the game. He should not be in there right now. It's a long season.
You're down 10. And then next play, he just throws a freaking missile, and it's like, okay, well, that's pretty awesome that you can do that with a broken wing or actually broken rib. Probably that's what it looked like, anyways.
Fair or unfair, my takeaway from this game is going to be that the Chargers squandered a lot of chances in the first half. I don't know what the thought process is behind being one of the most aggressive coaches in history last year on 4th and short situations, and then punting twice from midfield on 4th and less than 2 in a game where Patrick Mahomes is on the other sideline. Maybe some of that is increased confidence in your defense. We have actual players on that side of the ball. We think we can stop people. That's not a good reason. I'm wondering what's different. What is different now than it was last year when you were making some of these decisions? Because even though the game was close and they were winning at points after they decided to punt those, both of those drives, if those drives end in points, if they don't give the ball up in those situations, that's a huge turning point in this game. If you look at the overall arc of how the game went, those are big moments. When you're playing against that guy on the other side, even when you play really well on defense, which I think the Chargers did, and we can get into that, he's gonna get a couple. He is always going to be sitting there lingering and hovering and ready to come back and knife you. And I just think giving them those moments is a win for them. Even when they were doing it, I'm like, this is going to come back to get them. I just want to have that game be out of reach by the time the first half ends. And I just think they squandered some opportunities by giving him the ball back in those spots.
And isn't that the argument about if you're at midfield and punting and your defense is playing well? Isn't that
that's why you should go for it.
That's why you should go for it. My defense is playing great. Brandon Staley, and we talked about this in the pre-show, let's get into it right now, is that I didn't know he had this in him, especially on passing downs. That was some creative stuff as far as pressure, simulated. I'm really curious to watch the passing down looks from this game about what the Chargers defense did, because they've shown some looks that were creative and different than maybe I've seen before, or stuff I've seen, but maybe not all in one game. So I think that's one of my biggest takeaways, even though they lost, was, all right, rather than being this basic too high stuff that we fawn over and doing all the stuff with the fronts and everything, showing these different pressures out of it. And really doing a great job against a really good offensive line and a quarterback that's, I mean, Mahomes avoided about 4 sacks, 5 sacks maybe, just by getting rid of the ball. But that speaks to how good that Chargers defense was doing on these passing downs. The Chiefs went 4 for 12 on third down. And that really speaks to what this game plan was on a short week. And I get it. Like that's a feather. I know they lost the game, but that is really a feather in the cap, really, to what this Chargers defense can be, rather than just static and have Bosa and Khalil Mack just, be banshees on the edges. It's that they brought some creative looks. The first drive on I think it was the first drive, maybe the second drive. The one that a couple people talked about, it was a 5-man pressure, a 5-man protection. They got 2 guys loose on that. That was a creative look to create that pressure. And Mahomes had to throw hot. He almost lobbed it up for a pick. And that speaks to the Chargers defense. It was just one of those that they squandered some chances. And that's the thing about when you have an elite quarterback on either side, and of course Mahomes is Mahomes, is that you can't squander those chances. That's what good quarterbacks do, is they go, well, you had your chance, and guess what? I'm going to score when you don't hit that chance.
It was interesting because there was a second drive of the game. It was 2nd and 7. The Chiefs went empty. And I think that pressure that you're talking about might have been a reaction to them going empty, because I didn't see them do it much for the rest of the game.
No.
So they lined up. Both linebackers were mugged up as a result of them shifting out into empty. And Tranquil came, but Sebastian Joseph Day he dropped. So he was right underneath Kelsey, and the right guard just did not pay attention to Tranquil. Yep. So they only brought 4, but they brought it in a funky way. They did that a lot in the first half. They brought more pressure in the second half, but it felt like when they were rushing forward, they weren't getting as much pressure. I want to go back and watch some of the dropbacks in the second half.
It's a very good game to review.
I didn't notice why the pressure kind of was turned down in the second half, but I felt that it was. I didn't feel like they were creating that edginess in the pocket that you and I talk about the same way they were in the first half. But I do think overall, the game plan was very, very good. A couple just busted moments, and I think we can point to 3 or 4 of them. That Asante Samuel near interception, the game changes on that play if he makes that play. An incredible play by him, by the way. They're trying to clear him out of that side, and he watches Mahomes' eyes, reads it the entire way and falls off, and nearly makes a game-changing play. The big Kelsey completion that got them down inside the 5, almost the exact same idea that we were talking about with the Justin Jefferson play from Sunday. They were in quarters.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
J.C. Jackson's passing it off, and there's just a miscommunication. The Chiefs are so good at putting you in bad spots, even in a game where it's going to be frustrating on a down-to-down basis because the other defense has really good players and a very good game plan. They're going to find 5 or 6 of these moments. They're going to consistently make it hard on you. The touchdown to Watson, that's just a very cool design where he's in a condensed split and J.C. Jackson's an outside leverage, and the way that route releases really puts J.C. Jackson in a tough bind because he's got to respect that, but then he bends it back in. It was just a really good play and a really good moment. Those are going to happen, but down to down, I was pretty impressed with what the Chargers defense looked like. I do want to go back and watch why the pressure might not have been quite as influential in the second half.
And that's when you go against an offense with a good old line and a good quarterback, that's what's frustrating. It's like, oh, we got him. We gamed him up. Like Brandon Staley and this defensive staff gamed him up a couple times. They had one where they caught Creed Humphrey with a late pressure down the A gap. And I want to watch that one because Creed Humphrey was
Van Noy came from the other side because they slid the wrong way. So he had to respond. That was a great call. That was a 5-man pressure that actually worked.
I want to look at it because I want to see how they did it, how they got to it, because Andy Reid's protection stuff, it's not overly complicated, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Is it's kind of in between what I talk about with the Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense, and maybe Tom Brady and the Arians offense, and maybe the Shanahan offenses, which is super simple. It's the middle ground. Like they are the middle ground as far as rules and set and forget it and all that. So that's what's cool when you see a defense game them up several times. It's like, ooh, they caught them. They have tells. They figured out how they got it. So and they did it all throughout the first half. That's what I'm glad you brought up obviously, but the Watson touchdown that J.C. Jackson, when you have a condensed split, the rules are usually say for a defense, and I wish Deontay was on here because he could preach about this, is it's crossers or corners. That's what you're usually worried about. Crossers and corners. Outbreakers, because you want inside leverage, or you want inside split, so you give yourself room, or crossers because you want to get across the formation. So all of a sudden when the guy widens you and then breaks in, it's
just
and
a
if
great
you have
call.
the time to do
It's a great design.
3rd and 10, and you got him, and you have Mahomes buying time. That's what the freak quarterbacks
Making
do.
an insane play. I mean, the fact that he steps up in the
With
pocket and hits that throw is absolutely crazy.
No feet.
The other guy that makes that play happen was McKinnon. They did a great job of picking up the pressure. They brought a blitz on that play, and it worked out well. I mean, that's just one of those plays where they're going to hit you every once in a while. The last one, I mean, obviously a sliding doors moment in this game. The pick 6 is just... it's one of those things where you don't want to lay blame on necessarily one person, one party in that. Everett is gassed. He's totally gassed. They go tempo.
The human element.
And he's sitting there, and Herbert thinks he's going to be inside. He leaves the throw inside. You would assume that he's going to box him out and make that play, and it doesn't happen. It goes all the way back for a touchdown. And I think that if you stack up all of those, there's reason for optimism with the Chargers, with the coaching on defense, with just the chances that they had, with what they're going to be over the course of the season, with the improved personnel they have on that side of the ball. I have some issues still with what's going on offense. Would you like to know what Justin Herbert averaged air yards per attempt in the second half of this game?
Do I want to know?
According to True Media. And you don't want to know.
I don't. What was it?
3.1.
It's
3.1. These are numbers that are coming out right after the game ends. That could be wrong, but I don't think it's wrong.
No,
I have no reason to believe that it's wrong. So that's what I'm looking at right now. It's 3.1.
And it's what it felt like.
32 dropbacks in the second half.
And it's what it felt like. It was so much quick game.
I understand why you feel like you need to operate in a condensed area. Teams are going to put a roof on you and make you play like that. But how static their approach is living in that sort of world, it just limits the ceiling of what your offense can be so much. When it's stick and curls and all of these plays where guys are not catching the ball moving toward the other goal line. Like there is no one that's ever catching the ball on the run within this offense. That couple different times they ran the orb motion little RPO to DeAndre Carter that got some yards. But every time they did it, they took Mike Williams out. Every time they did that play, they took Mike Williams out. So there was a tell when they did the orb motion play. Sorry, I noticed that. Which is funny. You don't want your 6'4", 220-pound receiver to block?
Right. But it's also like, hey, take a blow because we're going to run like this little bubble stop. But that's the thing. It's like you were having a tendency on something that should be a gimme play, if that makes sense.
It's hard to do. And by the way, I was going to say it's hard to do without the All-22. The NGS version of the Amazon stream is a game changer.
I didn't get to see it.
The fact that you can sit there and watch, it's not All-22 every single play, but they do a really good job of giving you that angle a lot. But without watching the actual All-22 of the game, it's hard to know exactly how many opportunities he passed up. I am a little bit frustrated in how Herbert Street said this during the broadcast. So Justin Herbert gets through his progressions faster than any quarterback in the league. Yep. I don't think that's always a good thing. I think he's getting to some of these underneath throws really, really quickly, and his brain is such a fucking supercomputer that it almost moves too fast. There was a play where he had Everett on a little high-low coming over the middle of the field, and he went to the flat. And it's
he checked it down to the flat. Yep.
I just need I need you to hang in one more beat, my man, because I just want wherever we can create ambition within this very condensed offensive game plan, I think they need to. But it's a frustrating team to watch, and the problem is, we've talked about this coming into the season. This, to me, this game is a perfect encapsulation, minus Keenan Allen, of what the Chargers offense really wants to be in the passing game, okay? There's really, I tweeted this as a joke. Mike Williams is just posting up. Like, they're playing basketball with some of these looks, and Justin Herbert's just feeding the post. That's what they want to be with those big bodies, but they don't have anybody. I'm going back and thinking about some of the concepts that were drawn up for A.J. Brown in that Eagles game, right? Yeah. And just how often they're getting him on the move and being able to, even if you're living underneath, can you create explosive plays through design? But the Chargers don't really have those kinds of players. And I think that's going to show up where if teams are going to put that roof over you and you can't push the ball down the field, they don't really have the type of guys that if I'm going to hit a slant and this is going to be a 30-yard gain. And I think that the combination of the mindset they bring in, the type of game Joe Lombardi wants to call, and the personnel that they have, I'm just worried about it. I'm worried about where the juice comes from having to live in the world that they're in right now.
I know we sound like we're beating the same drum, but that's exactly right. There's so many times in this game, especially in the second half, where like I'm glad you brought up where you checked it down, and you could tell Herbert's hitting this back foot on a 7-step drop, mind you. A 7-step drop is that it's supposed to be vertically attacking, and the benefit when you have a 7-step drop is you check it down, and there's room for the guy to make, especially a guy like Austin Eckler, to have room to create. Okay, the next defender's 7 yards away. All right,
he is an exception here, by the way. He can create when he catches the ball in those situations, and maybe that's part of the reason that they go to him so often in those moments. But it's still frustrating to watch.
It is, and you don't want to live that way. You know what I mean? That's more just like a hitting the easy button. I've talked about this with the Rams offense, and what I'm saying, where I'm excited about with the Vikings offense this year is that, okay, we saw so many times Todd Gurley taking a check down and running up the sideline because then he creates an explosive play off a 4-yard check down. But the thing is, it's because those play action plays make the defense push backwards. And so you check it down, guy gets upside, you're just creating room to breathe. It's gravity in its own way. And if you're not, Midge is meowing, by the way. If you don't, she's even upset about this.
She's frustrated. We want more out of this team.
We wanted this to be 48-45 with a whole bunch of bombs and all that, but that's not what this offense is. And this is not what Joe Lombardi is used to. They ran 12 personnel a whole bunch of times. And I get it that Keenan Allen's out and all that, but that didn't seem just like this type of game. It seemed like a game that you're attacking down the field. Spagnuolo didn't really seem like he was heating them up too much. It seemed like he was more of a safer defense. It seemed normal.
The numbers aren't crazy. Like, I think that they had like a similar blitz rate to what the Chargers had. It was like a quarter of total snaps during the game. It was in the second half, they actually only blitzed 12% of the time. I'm looking at the numbers right now. The Chiefs did. Yeah.
And, well, I mean, if that's what the Steve Spagnuolo is doing against you, okay, put it on tape. And I get it's a division game, it's a Thursday game, all that. But the fact that Spagnuolo, Mr. Heat 'em up, do all the stuff, and he was like, let's rein it back. Let's see what this team can do with all the yak stuff. I'm going to say, I will say this too as well, is having a guy like Gerald Everett as a tight end and be able to create after the catch, that does help. Having some juice. But this offense just lacks so much juice because it's a lot of catch and tackles. And I want to look.
It's so static.
It is. I know. It's the same frustrations we have with the Cowboys offense. I know we bring it up all the time. I want to look up what the yak yardage is because that is, about half his yards came from yak. But
when you're throwing the ball 3 yards down the field, they have to come from yak.
That's not what you want to do.
The numbers are going to be misleading there because there's going to be a ton of yards after catch because there has to be, but there's still low ceiling plays, even if you're getting some yards after catch.
That's a good way to put it. Low ceiling plays. That's what it is. It's very safe. Everything with this offense feels safe while they have the fucking Terminator at quarterback.
I know.
Like that's what, and I agree with you that Herbert does get through it quick, but also benefit with Herbert get through it quick if you push the ball down the field. And this is why I love some of these like super juice quarterbacks, like even the Josh Allens of the world. Josh Allen has learned to be safe, but he learns to freaking push it because they give him vertical options. They'll go empty and have a guy going vertical. Have something, and it's a very 2002 offense. It's a very, and it's like, it's fine. It's built off 3 and 5 step concepts. And again, a lot of this is fine. Like none of these concepts are like bad, but it's like you say, you're putting a ceiling on what this offense should do, especially when you have a T1000 at quarterback.
The big play to Williams down the left sideline where he got the and one dunk and the penalty. It's a 7-man protection. And really, it's an 8-man protection because Carter chipped. So there are 3 guys out in the route, but really it's a 2-man route. Don't even give him the check down. Just make him throw it. That's totally fine with me. I would love if they were wadding it up more on first down because even his air yards on play action today were extremely low. I think that's boosted by a couple screens, and they had a couple play action screens to Eckler and stuff like that.
They ran a ton of screens, yeah.
These numbers can be a little bit misleading, but I just want a little bit more out of it. I will say, a couple things on the offensive line for the Chargers. Zion Johnson looked awesome against Chris Jones early in this game, to the point that they're like, well, screw it. We'll just move him to the other side. And Chris Jones made 3 or 4 monster plays in this game against Matt Fowler, who's a pretty good player. I think that just lets you know what sort of ceiling and what sort of guy we're going to be talking about potentially with Zion Johnson. The fact that the Chiefs decided we're just going to move him to the other side away from the rookie because we want him to be able to affect the game. And oh boy, did Chris Jones affect the game after they did that.
And I think what I want to reiterate with this game, okay, it was a division opponent, short week, and 2 very good football teams going at it.
Yes.
And that's where I don't want anyone to say the sky's falling for the Chargers or that the Chiefs got super lucky. This is what good football teams do. They expose your weaknesses, just like Staley did on 3rd down, which I actually think is so interesting because I was so excited to watch this Chiefs offensive line and what they did against the Cardinals last week with all the blitzes that they were bringing. I'm like, ooh, look at this. Look at this. Oh man, they're bobbing and weaving. Look at this. And then 1 week, 4 days later, the Chargers, a team that I don't know as a pressure team. I don't picture Staley as a guy that has this huge Rolodex of pressures, getting them and gaming them. I think that's so cool. So I think that speaks more to the Chargers too. But that's what it's so funny. That's why I love the NFL is these are 2, I think, really juggernauts of teams going at it. And that's why I want to, we're disappointed somewhat with the Chargers that did, and maybe some of the things that the Chiefs did, but it's no, these are 2 awesome teams going at it.
I'm disappointed because they squandered a chance to beat the Kansas City Chiefs on the road in week 2 in a division game. It's a game they absolutely could have won, and I don't think they put themselves in the best position to win the game. A couple personnel things with the Chargers to just keep an eye on. Corey Linsley goes down in this game. Don't know when he's going to be back. That's a potentially huge loss for them. And Trey Pipkins, the right tackle, also got hurt. So they're dealing with 2 backup offensive linemen. God. That's where, talk about sky is falling. If that starts to become a serious problem, that's when I start to get very, very worried. One more thing, and I don't want to pick on him. I was super excited when the Chargers drafted JT Woods in the 3rd round because I thought it was going to give them a chance to move Derwin James all around, which they were doing some today. They were using some 3 safety looks. One of my favorite looks that the Chargers have is, I think, Penny is the package that you call it on defense.
Personnel grouping,
So you have a 5-man front with 1 single linebacker. So you're a nickel, but you have a 5-man front. I love the personnel that the Chargers can put on the field when they do that. So that was one thing, and
that's where Van Noy comes into play, correct?
And so Van Noy, and I think Murray was in there a couple different times in that situation. This
Murray
week too.
Actually looked really good, heating up the quarterback a little bit. I
thought he had some good moments today. The last 2 games are probably the best 2 games he's played as a Charger. Yep. So that personnel package I think is really interesting, and I think when they use Derwin as a dime linebacker, they can do some cool stuff with him. But when they have a Alohi Gilman on the field as that 3rd safety, you can just feel it. Multiple of the big plays in this game happened when he was on the field as their 3rd safety. So I think as you get really deep into the different personnel groupings that the Chargers can use, whether it's having Trey McKitty as their 2nd tight end when now that Donald Parham is out, some of the offensive line injuries, Gilman is their 3rd safety, they're not as deep as we think they might be after all the guys that they added this year. And I think it's just an important thing to keep in mind. If they start getting hurt, this thing could go off the rails.
Robert Mays, are you saying that they're stars and scrubs? Are you describing the LA Chargers as stars and scrubs?
No, I don't think that's fair. I think that the guys in the secondary, when most of them are healthy, like Callahan is fine. I think as long as he's around, that's a really good thing.
Chargers DBs looked fucking awesome tonight.
That's what I mean. The DBs do look awesome, and I do think they have enough bodies up front. I just think there are 1 or 2 spots today where it was not alarm bells, but
no.
I'm starting to think about it. In the back of my mind, it's ooh, I'm going to file this away because I think this could be a problem in certain moments if they keep going to these looks on defense and if the offensive line keeps getting dinged up.
Yeah, and this AFC is just such a bloodbath because, even with the Chiefs, I'm watching them tonight, and I know we're talking about the Chargers right now, and then you watch the.
We should probably talk about the Chiefs because we haven't at all.
All right, I know, but you watch this Chiefs team, and it's that's why I'm sure, as a neutral fan, it's a lot of fun, but that's what they're inevitable. It's you feel those moments, the drop pick. You felt that moment. You're like, oh, that's it. You get the door, you hear the door opening a little bit, and Mahomes is just Mahomes threw that touchdown to Watson, and he came off the field and he was like he just kind of nodded, yeah, Like, we got it. And it was like, oh, God. I wish I had that confidence.
That's why you can't give them opportunities. That's why you can't give them 4th and 2s at midfield.
Nope.
Because if you crack that door open the tiniest bit, they're going to slam it wide open. And they do it every single time. And that's why it's so frustrated. And that's why it's so frustrating. And that's why if you're a Charger fan, you're watching this game, I just can't imagine how deflating it is for that to be the end result when you had so many good moments on defense. And you really played a great game. It was a great game plan. You had a human version of Patrick Mahomes for all but like 3 or 4 plays. But sometimes that's all he needs. Sometimes he only needs the 3 or 4 plays. And that's the concern. But I think what we watched tonight was a game between 2 very, very good football teams that are going to be around until the end of this whole thing. I'm worried about the Chargers' offensive line health. I'm worried about whether their quarterback has some... There's a chance that his rib cage is just powder in his body right now. I don't know how that ends up for him, but I'm a little bit worried about what he looked like at the end of that game and if it's anything long term.
He's a tough competitive dude, and the fact that 3rd and 1 where he was like, screw this, I'm not running it. I was, but that's the thing. He's so competitive. And the fact is that the Chargers had 6 more first downs today. Like they were controlling this game. They really were. They were dictating that whole first half. Like they had the Chiefs on the ropes. I consider this a true heavyweight fight. This was Frazier Ali to me. It really was, as far as this season. It wasn't, oh, this team got lucky, and that's how it is. When you have these teams that I feel like are more evenly matched than I think other people want to consider before the injuries. But that's how I consider these teams. That's what it is. It's a game of inches, and that's where the stuff happens. When the drop pick or that you don't get this first down, you punt it when you shouldn't punt, yada, yada, yada. Those things come up to catch you. Or, sorry, my God. Get up to catch you. I'm going to speak it out. I'm going to spell it out at one point. But it's like, that's what it was. It was 2 really, really good football teams going at it and 2 very, very, very good quarterbacks going at it.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's just not a ton to say about the Chiefs. We know what the Chiefs are. We know who they are, and we know who they are in these sorts of moments. And
Andy Reid's got to stop panicking. That's, oh my God, he's 20 years of play calling. As soon as that run game stalls a couple times, he just goes, quick game. And and it happened again for 2 quarters, and then he got back into it. But it's just so funny that like that's what it happens to him every single time, and he gets away with it because he has number 15 back there. But Andy Reid sometimes has just got to stop doing that, and he got away with it tonight because he has a guy named Patrick Mahomes. Really, that's really what it was.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing to understand is that as long as he's around, they're going to have those games where they only need 4 or 5 moments, and tonight was one of them. But but these teams are going to be really good. They're going to be around for a long time. Teams. I don't think there's really anything else that we have to say.
I know.
That's all we got for tonight. Really appreciate you guys listening. Please go check out our preview episode for week 2, which is already up on anywhere you get your podcast. It's up on the YouTube channel if you want to go listen or watch it there. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already. We're going to be doing a lot more of this. I will have my microphone working in the next one. I'm very sorry that no one said anything about that. And we're going to be doing a ton more of that. Nate's Wind the Clock. We're going to do that again next Monday. Our Sunday show is going to be live this week on YouTube like it always is. So please come back and check that out. Please subscribe to The Athletic, theathletic.com/football show. We will be back on Sunday nights. Until then, appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.